Once upon a time, in a small town surrounded by dense forests, there was an old house that had been abandoned for years. The house had a reputation for being haunted, with locals claiming to hear whispers and strange sounds coming from within its walls. Despite the rumors, a young woman named Jane decided to rent the house, thinking that the stories were nothing more than superstition. But as she settled into her new home, she began to hear the whispers in the dark herself. At first, she tried to ignore them, thinking that it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. But the whispers persisted, growing louder and more unsettling with each passing night. Jane couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her, even though she was alone in the house. The feeling of being constantly watched made it hard for her to sleep at night, and she became increasingly anxious and paranoid. One night, unable to take it anymore, Jane decided to investigate the source of the whispers. She followed the sound to the attic, where she discovered an old journal hidden away in a trunk. The journal belonged to a woman named Mary, who had lived in the house several years before Jane. As Jane read through Mary's journal, she discovered a tragic story of love and loss. Mary had fallen in love with a man who had promised to marry her, but he disappeared without a trace. Devastated by his disappearance, Mary had become increasingly paranoid and had started hearing whispers in the dark. She believed that the whispers were the voice of her lost love, trying to communicate with her from beyond the grave. As Jane read on, she realized that the whispers she had been hearing were the same ones that Mary had heard all those years ago. She became obsessed with the journal, convinced that it held the key to unraveling the mystery of the whispers. She spent every waking moment reading through the journal, trying to decipher its hidden meaning. But the more she read, the more she became convinced that Mary's lost love was still in the house, trying to communicate with her. Jane started to see ghostly apparitions in the shadows, and she could feel a cold breath on the back of her neck. One night, as she was reading through the journal, Jane heard a whisper so loud that it made her jump. She turned around to see a shadowy figure standing in front of her, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Jane realized then that the whispers in the dark were not a figment of her imagination, nor were they the voice of Mary's lost love. They were the whispers of the ghosts that haunted the house, desperate to be heard and acknowledged. In the end, Jane couldn't take it anymore. She packed her bags and left the house, vowing never to return. The whispers in the dark continued to haunt her for years to come, a constant reminder of the ghosts that still lurked in the shadows.